Good morning, folks. Well, this information is for those of you that haven't been here in the last few weeks. We're talking about love. Not because last week was Valentine's Day. We started the first Sunday we met, I think, in the new year. And hopefully by July the 4th, we will be through love. This morning we're talking about love and marriage go together like the horse and what? The carriage. I had a crash course in love yesterday. I did. Kathy and I went to a restaurant yesterday, and the waitress set us down in a booth, and I had the misfortune to the booth behind me were 4 teenage girls. And they talked so loud I couldn't hear a thing that Kathy said. I'll get the right woman in a minute. I heard one of them say, "I love him, but I don't like him at all." And another one said, "I thought you were going to marry him." "No, I like somebody else. I want to marry him. He's cute, but I don't love him." By that point, I was so confused. I thought, what am I going to say this morning about love and marriage? Our text this morning is a powerful text written by the Apostle Paul to the Ephesian Christians. And in chapter 5, he's talking about the church and he's talking about marriage. And in that passage, it's very clear that husbands are to love their wives and wives are to do the same. But let's start at the beginning this morning with the subject of marriage and go through this very quickly so we can get it to the very heart of what I want to speak to you about. Marriage is a relationship that was created by God at the very beginning of time. You remember very well that in that week of creation, everything that God did, He said it was good, with the exception of one thing. Excuse me. That one thing that was not good was that Adam was alone. And he created Eve to be his helpmeet. And we have the beginning of marriage. In Matthew chapter 19, it refers to the creation scene, where we are told that a man will leave his father and mother and cleave unto his wife. I have preached a lot of sermons on leaving and cleaving. That's important. Not something to be laughed at or joked about. A marriage is a time of leaving a relationship and cleaving to another. The marriage relationship lasts because it is an earthly relationship. It ends at death. Jesus said there is no marriage in heaven, neither is there giving in marriage in heaven. It's an earthly relationship. And what is it for? Well, it's for companionship. One of the reasons. It's also for the bringing of children into the world. Procreation. It's also for the purpose of rearing children to adulthood. all balled up in one big circle we call marriage. If you've been here that first Sunday that we began our topic on love, you remember, and I'll repeat it again, I'm sure, many times, that in the original New Testament, which was written in Greek, there are 4 Greek words that were translated into English, love. They are sometimes referred to as the levels of love or types of love. But the New Testament really only uses one word out of those 4. And we'll get to that in a moment. But our subject is love and marriage. It's important this morning that we start with one idea. Those 4 Greek words that are translated into English as love should all be found in marriage. The first of those Greek words is eros. It is not found in the New Testament, but it is a well-known Greek word and has a lot of significance in English words today. It refers to the attraction between a man and a woman. It refers to a sexual relationship. It is simply the idea that a male or a female are physically attracted to each other. Physical attraction in marriage, my friends, is generally the way that a marriage begins. Those teenage girls that I was telling you about a moment ago were talking about boys and the ones they were attracted to and the ones they weren't. Physical attraction in marriage, intimacy. Excuse me, I can't talk this morning. Is important. Now that's not really our subject this morning, but let me remind you, it is a Bible subject. The relationship between a husband and his wife of a physical nature is found in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And the Apostle Paul lets us know that that is important to a marriage. But it is equally important for us to understand that if marriage is totally grounded on a physical attraction, then that marriage will probably not last. Because the physical attraction grows old. I went through some of the pictures downstairs before we brought them here to the building, and some of you don't look like you used to look. What happened? Do I need to tell you what happened? Yeah, you're right. Father Time got a hold of us. We're not as attractive physically as we used to be. Now there's an exception, me, but the rest of you. But seriously, a marriage cannot rest forever on physical attraction. I read an article in a church paper that was published probably 20-some years ago, or no, 30-some years ago, of a 94-year-old man who had just lost his 94-year-old wife. And he was very direct about how he felt about his wife. He said, I married her in her beauty, meaning she was attractive when he married her. But she wasn't attractive when she passed away at 94. But she was attractive in a different way now. There's a second word in Greek that is important. Some people pronounce it phileo. It is friendship, love. Again, we remember Philadelphia's name for this word, and it is called the city of brotherly love. I think most of us in this room have friends. And let me tell you, the book of Proverbs says to have friends is great. But our best friend has to be in marriage our mate. And phileo is a very important part of marriage. We can go home and talk to our husband or our wife, as the case might be, tell that individual about our day. We can lie in bed together and talk about our hopes, our fears, our goals, what's important. Our marriage mate needs to be our very best friend. I picked up an article from another congregation somewhere in Tennessee, I think it was, a few weeks ago. And a man in that congregation had gone apparently to several congregations and spoke to ladies and asked them this question. What do you want most from your husband in your marriage? And they listed those items, and I don't know that I could list all of them right now, but I remember the top 2 or 3. The very first thing that these married women wanted from their husband was that they wanted their husband to provide the spiritual leadership in their family. They wanted their husband, the father of their children, to provide the leadership of rearing their children in a spiritual way to please the God of heaven. We could talk about that one all day. The second thing these women wanted from their husbands, they wanted, now listen to this, ladies, and you men listen to it real well. They wanted their husbands to communicate to them, to talk to them. A lot of them said, my husband goes to work, talks to everybody at work. When he comes home, he doesn't talk to me. How was your day, honey? It's all right. I don't feel like talking to you. What they were really saying was they want a friend of their husband. That's important in marriage. You can call it communication, you can call it friendship, whatever you want to call it. But that's important. But phileo also is noted for the fact that sometimes there's a falling out of friends. I've heard people say to me, I used to be friends with them. There are times that husbands become angry with their wives, and the wives become angry with their husband. and that friendship relationship is strained. But there's a third kind of love that needs to be in marriage. Story, or however the Greeks pronounced it. It's called family love. I've heard a lot of ladies in my lifetime who are married with children refer to their husband as the father of my children. And men who are married and are fathers, she's the mother of my children. Family love is important. Everybody in this room knows it. And we all experience it. And all our family members aren't necessarily perfect. They may not do the right things. But family love is powerful. But I spent too much time on those. Let's go to number 4. In the passage that was read in your hearing a few minutes ago from Ephesians chapter 5, love is used there, 7 times maybe. You know which of those 4 Greek words was used by the apostle when he used them in that 5th chapter? It was number 4, agape. Agape love is the highest of all loves because it's the kind of love that God has towards us. Now, I'm just getting started here. Amanda, don't look at the clock. A marriage that's good, a marriage that's wonderful. Preacher friend of mine says, when I go home, I go to paradise. And he put 2 tall steel posts, 15 feet tall, in his driveway and put a sign across the top, paradise. What makes marriage paradise? It's agape, folks. Agape is, first of all, a decision to love. I was going to do something this morning, but I knew if I did it, I'd get in trouble with time. But you know something? If you're married, you made a decision. And when you came to that wedding ceremony, the preacher that stood right here, and you as the groom and the bride stood in front of him, and he said to you, repeat these vows after me. Do you remember what he said? A vow is a decision, number 1. Number 2, it's a promise. And number 3, it's a promise that you're going to keep. Do you take this woman to be your wife? To love her, agape her, in sickness, in health, in poverty, and in riches. Sometimes we use the phrase in good times and bad times. Then he turns to the bride and says the same thing. What are you promising? You're promising to agape that man or that woman when times are good and when they're bad. Let me remind you in our text. I should be preaching on this text. The text says that you husbands are to love your wives. Agape them. And then to explain what that means, Paul turns his attention to Jesus Christ. And he says, Jesus Christ agapes what? The church. And that in this building. The church are the people that call themselves Christians, that have confessed their faith and they've been baptized for the forgiveness of their sins. Now, I give you permission, if you want to this morning, to look around and see who's here. Now, I don't have any ulterior motives, but I don't see anybody that's perfect here. Let me tell you, men, there's no such thing as the perfect wife, because she's human. And ladies, there sure ain't anything perfect when it comes to a man. Jesus loves the church, who is made up of imperfect people. The Lord loves us when we make a mistake. And when we as human beings says, Lord, I was wrong, I've made a mistake, will you forgive me? What does the Lord do? He forgives. In marriage, husbands make a lot of mistakes. I've had young men come into my office who've been married for a while, and they, Brother Morgan, we're having a little problem. My wife's not like me. You know what the words I use? I say, dummy. She's not a male. Women are different than men. God made women different than men, and vice versa. They have different emotions, different feelings. I heard a man say the other day, I go somewhere and I get lost. I never tell my wife I'm lost. We're just taking a different way. Is that right, ladies? He's never wrong. Said, I don't understand her. She says, stop and ask somebody. Oh, I'd never do that. Men and women are different. God agapes the church. And men and women that are married agape each other. Now, Dustin, let me tell you, I'm preaching to you today. I hate to tell you, Dustin, but she's not perfect. Get ready for it. Amanda, I'm preaching to you today. He's not going to do everything you want. Folks, the thing that keeps a marriage the way it ought to be and to make it paradise is agape love. And men, when you mess up, you say, I'm sorry. And you know, in marriage, there has to be forgiveness. And marriage can be wonderful. Or it can be a hell on earth. The decision rests with the marriage partners. And I beg you to understand that agape love is most important. You know, I've had couples come in the office, whatever, and say, will you perform our wedding? And my wheels start turning. What does he see in her? Or what is wrong with her that she's going to marry him? And you know, I'm proud to say this. I've been wrong a lot of times. I think of a couple right now. I knew the bride's mother. Matter of fact, I taught her in school. And I knew the young man from the day he was born. But for some reason, when we had that wedding, which I performed, that man, young man, I think he was 20, and she was about the same age, they understood what agape meant. Agape love. And it's been a difficult time. But they made a decision. Now listen to this. When they heard the words that I used in that vow, until death do us part. It was a lifetime relationship. And we are going to make the best of it. No matter the problems that we might encounter. So Ephesians chapter 5 is all about agape. The other thing that I urge young people, pick your marriage partner well. I remember sitting at my grandfather's breakfast table one time, Vinton Merwine, some of you knew him. I was probably 16 years old. He'd probably been married 60 years, I don't know. I knew he was ancient. He looked at me without a joking face or anything. He said, boy, when you get married, you make sure you want to look at her for 50 years. And make sure you want to live with her for 50 years. It's important for young folks to pick their marriage partner well. Pick a Christian. Because a genuine Christian understands what it means to agape love someone. Love is what? The greatest thing in all the world. Men, and you ladies can do this too. But men, read Proverbs 31. Boy, I could get on that one right now. You know, sometimes women read that during ladies' Bible class, or ladies, hey, that's you men who need to read it. In picking a wife. Man, pick the woman in Proverbs 31. I mean, she's a worker. She's respected. She takes care of you and the family. Of course, the last verse says that her beauty is going to fade away, but it's going to be replaced with all of those good things. Folks, love in marriage is like the horse and carriage. It is vitally important. I'm going to be real personal right now. All of you know that I've had 2 wives. And they were both wonderful ladies. They were both Christians. And I love them both. And I love Kathy, just like I did Peggy. And one time I remember very well that Peggy and I had a difference about something. And she said, remember, we got into this for life. Now, Kathy and I haven't got to that point yet. But it's coming. Folks, you got a lot of grandchildren to talk to? Talk to them. Now, I've already taken care of Amanda and Dustin. They've been told. By the way, I'm going to do their ceremony. And they'll hear it again. But folks, marriage can be the most wonderful thing in the world. But remember those 4 things, and agape's number 1. Joe, what's the hymn for?
367. I honestly forget the title.
Well, that's what I want, Joe.
Take my life, let it be.
Take my life and let it be. Take your hymn book and turn to that hymn. And we offer the invitation of Jesus Christ for you to take advantage of the agape love that Christ has for us. He died for us when we weren't worth it. And when we become Christians, with all of our frailties and shortcomings, He still agapes us. If you're not a Christian, make that confession of faith and you can be baptized for the forgiveness of your sins this very day. Or if you have some other need that you want to share with this body of folks, won't you come down the aisle now while we stand and sing, please?